Hi everybody, today we're going to talk about grouped frequency and relative frequency distributions in Excel. When our data has a large range of values, we need to group the data into classes. The classes should have an equal width. The data should only belong to one data class. We need to limit the number of data classes to 5 to 12, but this will vary with the data. There are times when 5 might be too many, so you really need to let the data help you decide how many classes you have and what the class width will be. To help determine our classes and the class width, we want to start by finding the maximum and minimum values of the data. Then we can look at the range of the data, which is the maximum minus the minimum data value. Then we'll determine the number of classes you want, and sometimes you're told what you want, so you won't have to think about that. Then you'll divide the range by the number of classes. Based on this number, you may need to round to get the class width you're going to use, but this will give you a good general guide. In the end, you want to make sure that your classes include the minimum value of the data and the maximum value of the data when you set up the classes. Let's take a look at a few examples to see how that could work. I'll do multiple examples because I want to show you what to do with a smaller amount of data and a larger amount of data, and I'll throw in a little example of a chart just to show you that Excel is easy to work with, and I don't want you to be intimidated by how much technology we're using in this class. To start, I'm going to talk about this chart about the number of unprovoked shark attacks worldwide from 2000 to 2022. I'm taking this data from Statista, but in the details, you can see this is from the University of Florida International Shark Attack Files 2000 to 2022. So what I did to grab this data that is right now in an interactive chart is I went to Excel and I downloaded it. But now you can see I have the data in this chart. When it came over, it separated the shark attacks into fatal and non-fatal. So I'm adding a third column that says total, and all I'm going to do is click in the cell and push equals. I'm going to click on fatal, I'll hit plus, I'll click on non-fatal, I'll push enter. To copy that down, I'm going to click in that cell, and then when it turns to a plus sign, I'm just going to double click, and it's going to fill in that information. So this is what I want to look at, is the total shark attacks. Now, when we're looking at the total number of shark attacks, we can see that there are a lot of values. We are not going to want to say how many times were 89 people attacked or 76 or 66. That's too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to figure out what's the largest number of shark attacks that occurred in any of these years. So again, I'm going into a cell and I'm going to push equal, and I'm going to type max, parenthesis, and then I'm going to highlight this total column. When I push enter, it returns that 98 is the highest value. You can write on top if it helps you to remember that that was the max. So let's go underneath and let's do in another cell, let's put them in. So again, to tell it we're doing math, I push equals. I type min, I put a parenthesis, and I'm going to highlight those same cells again to see that my minimum value was 55. I might want to know the range of values. So to get the range, I'm just going to subtract those two numbers. So I'm going to click on the 98 and I'm going to subtract the 55. And it tells me I have a range of 43 values in this information. Because this data is kind of nice, we go from the 50s up into the 90s, maybe we would decide this time we just want to go like from 50 to 59 and 60 to 69. 70 to 79, 80 to 89, and then 90 to 99. So we're going to do something that might seem a little weird at first, but it's really going to help in the long run. I'm going to take the highest number of each data class and I'm going to enter it in the cell to the left of each class. So by 50 to 59, I'm going to type 59. Then I'll type 69. 79, and you'll see as you type that Excel kind of tells what you're doing, and so I can push enter and it'll fill in the rest. So it kind of auto-fills for me, or you can write them all as you wish. So to find the frequency of each class, we'll do something similar to what we did when we had singular terms. I'm going to highlight the cells where the data is going. I'll type equals, then I type frequency, just like we did before. Then I'll highlight my data, which is in the total column. I push a comma. Then I'm going to select the bin array to be the upper limits of each class. Excel is not going to be able to read these classes that we put in, but it can identify the upper class. So we just want to select this column of data. I'm going to close my parenthesis, Control-Shift-Enter will fill all of the data in. If you want to do a total, I can go to the bottom and push Sum. This sum represents the number of years, not the number of shark attacks. And then if I want to get the relative frequency, I could push equals, click on the 6, divide by, let's click on the 23, and remember how we push F4? This will allow the denominator to stay at 23, but it will go through each data class and look at the relative frequency of each of the classes. Now I can click back on the cell, double click on the right corner, it'll fill in the frequencies for me. If I right click, I can format the cell and make it a percentage. I'm going to keep 2 decimal places this time. Let's go back and label this. This was my frequency. Then I had my relative frequency. And we were looking at number of shark attacks. Let me show you one last thing while we're here, just to show it'll be really easy to convert this from just a table into a chart. I'm going to highlight my classes and the frequency, and I'm going to go to Insert, and then I can go to either the chart I want to do or the recommended chart. So let's hit recommended chart and see what it suggests. So the first one is a bar graph. So let's click that bar graph. At the top, I'm going to put a title, and I'm going to be really specific with this title. If you would like to make things bigger, we can enlarge it. You can click on the axis, go to the home, and then change the font size. Same thing on the bottom. I can go back and change the font size. If you think the font's too big, you can go back and make it smaller. You can change the colors however you like. You can again right click. You could change the fill. Maybe we want to put in a picture. Here I'm just going to go to online pictures, and I'm going to type shark. This is going to let me pick an image of a shark that comes from Creative Commons. That way there's no copyright issue. And that becomes my backdrop. The picture can help draw people in and help them understand what the data is that we're looking at before they ever read the title. My second set of data is just a bunch of numbers that I had Excel randomly generate for me. I have 200 different items in this list. So the first thing we're going to want to know is, what does our data look like? So I'm going to type max and min, and then let's let Excel help us out. So I type equals, then max. I'm going to highlight all 200 items. So I found out my maximum value is 42. Now let's look at our minimum. I'm going to type equals min, and again, highlight. And we found out our minimum is 18. So let's again find the range, which is just the difference between the max and the min. So I'm going to type equals, click on the max, minus, click on the min, and I have a range of 24. So this time I'm going to do 6 data classes. Since my range is 24 and my number of classes is 6, I'm expecting a class width of 4. So I'm going to type here that these are my classes. My first class will start at 18, and I'm going to add 4, so that's 22. Then I'll start at 23, I'll add 4, that's 27. 28, when I add 4 is 32. 33, I add 4, that's 37. And then my last class starts at 38, and it will end at 42. Remember, we're going to go on the left, and I'm going to type my upper class limit. 22, 27, 32, 37, and 42. And again, we could have let it autofill, but this time I typed them in. I'm going to highlight the cells beside my classes. I'll type equals frequency. I put a parenthesis, and then I highlight all of my data. I put a comma, then I highlight the upper class limits. I close the parenthesis, Control, Shift, Enter. So now we have the number of elements in each class, and I'm going to do the auto sum to show you that we have the 200 data values that we said we started out with. If we would like to know instead of just the frequency, the relative frequency. Then I'll go into the first cell under the relative frequency and I'll type equals. I'll click on my first data value, divide by, and then I divide by the total. Remember, with the total, we hit F4 to get our absolute reference. We push enter. Then I go back to the cell, double click to fill it in, right click, format cells, percentage. Again, if you want to check the total, go underneath, hit auto sum, and it should come out to 100%. This time, we don't really know what the data stands for, and that's perfectly okay. I can see my classes, I know my class width, I have my frequency, I have my relative frequency, and if I wanted to, I could easily make a chart. We'll have more videos later to talk about more charts, but I wanted to show you how quick and easy it's going to be when we're ready.